It's decision day in Ontario. The candidates have made their pitch. Now it's up to the voters to choose their next premier and provincial government. Good afternoon. Polls have opened across the province, and Ontarians are casting their ballots as we speak.
The snap election was called last month by incumbent Doug Ford as he hopes to earn another 4-year mandate. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris is live in Etobicoke with a preview of the big night. Siobhan.
Well, after 5 weeks of campaigning crisscrossing the province, it all comes down to this. We are at PC campaign headquarters. The room is a little bare right now. I'll let you take a look around. But later tonight, this area will be packed with PC supporters and members of the media as well. You'll notice there's a really big Canadian flag behind me. Doug Ford's really been leaning into that Canadian pride theme in the last few weeks of this campaign, facing Donald Trump's tariff threat and also that talk of making Canada a 51st state. We caught up with Doug Ford on his way to cast his ballot this morning. His campaign has really been one about, in his words, protecting Ontario in the face of those tariffs, protecting families, protecting jobs and companies. It remains to be seen whether voters will punish him at all for calling this election more than a year early, and I'm sure many people not too happy to be voting in the snow today. We also saw Marit Stiles this morning in a Liberal head riding Beaches East York. She's been trying to really protect a lot of NDP-held seats in areas like Toronto, Hamilton, in the Niagara region. She's really also fighting to hang on to that official opposition status. Mike Schreiner out voting in his riding of Guelph. He's trying to make history electing in a general election a second Green MPP. There already was one, but she was vaulted there during a by-election. So Mike Schreiner is trying to prove that this wasn't a one-time fluke and hoping to maybe even add a third seat at Queen's Park. Bonnie Crombie didn't have any public events today, but the Liberal leader has really made her campaign focused on health care and all the broken promises she says have come from Doug Ford, things that he hasn't delivered on. She says things like the continuation and the deepening of hallway health care, that there haven't been tax cuts promised, and that we have seen a slowdown in the number of homes being built. Here's more of what we heard from some of the leaders on the campaign trail this morning.
I'm asking for your vote to have a strong mandate to outlive and outlast Donald Trump. I'm going to protect the people of Ontario. I'm going to protect your families, your jobs, your communities, and businesses. So I'd be very, very grateful for your support.
Today, you can use the power of your vote to choose a better Ontario. You can use your vote to choose an Ontario where we are going to hire doctors, where you can have an affordable home, where you can pay for your groceries and not break the bank.
Well, in 2022, the PCs managed to score 83 seats in the legislature. It's a total they're hoping to add to tonight, and you can imagine this place will just be wild with excitement if they manage to do that. Reporting live, I'm Siobhan Morris. Nathan and Michelle, back to you.
All right, thank you, Siobhan. And on this election day, CTV's Natalie Johnson is live in Scarborough at a polling station this afternoon. Natalie, Siobhan mentioned the weather. It's a rare winter election and not ideal way to start the day for sure.
Yeah, exactly, Michelle. There has been a steady trickle of voters heading into the school here where this polling station is set up. But as you say, it is a rare sight to see people trudging through the snow on the way to the ballot box. This, of course, being the first winter election in more than 140 years. Certainly some of the snow that had been slowing down the city in the last few days has begun to melt, making the sidewalks a little bit more passable. Elections Ontario very much reliant on municipal authorities to clear all of this snow. Here in Toronto, the city has said that staff have prioritized snow cleanup efforts around polling stations, insisting that that will be monitored throughout the voting period today. Here's what a handful of voters at this polling station today had to say about why they made a point to come out and cast their vote.
You know, it's important that we live here to do the right thing, to have our voices heard. My father was in the war, so voting is very important.
If you don't vote, you can't complain. I believe that there's a lot of things that are ignored, and we are very focused on certain elements such as healthcare, which we all know immigration has impacted greatly. Schooling. People aren't having as many kids, so of course school funding is cutting. We stick to things that everybody can grab onto and be emotional about, but the truth of the matter is our economy needs to improve. Without improvement in our economy, Toronto's lost, Ontario's lost.
For me, I'm old. I am a pensioner, that's okay, but the young children, they need something for helping for school and helping to have a job for the future.
So we support Doug Ford. We've supported the Ford family since his brother was alive. Because his brother, when I lived in this neighborhood, it was not the representative who ever helped me. It was always Rob Ford.
And so it will be interesting to see once all the ballots are counted what voter turnout is like in this election, both as a result of the sloppy streets and also just the voter engagement in a lot of the major issues at play here. We know that in 2022, voter turnout was a historic low. It was at 43.5%. And that polling in the last number of weeks hasn't changed drastically here in Ontario since this election was first called. So that is certainly something to watch. We'll see whether voters have more of a political appetite this time around. The polls are open today until 9 p.m. Reporting live, I'm Natalie Johnson. Back to you, Nathan.
Thank you, Natalie. A Nanos research poll released last night for CTV News and CP24 shows the Ontario PCs continue to maintain their lead over the Liberals. The PCs have 47.8% support, while the Liberals dropped nearly 3% to 26.2%. The NDP's next with 15.4%, and the Green Party has 6.4%. Nearly 9% of voters polled were undecided as of yesterday.
When asked who they'd like to be Ontario's premier when all the results are in, just over 44% of decided voters said Doug Ford. Just over 22% chose Bonnie Crombie, and 14.1% picked Marit Stiles. Mike Schreiner has nearly 8% support. The most recently gathered responses are considered accurate within 3.9 percentage points, 19 times out of 20.
There hasn't been much of a shift in the support for the Conservatives and the New Democrats. What we have seen in the last couple of days, at least, is a little bit of a shift between the Liberals and the Greens. So, that's been a little bit, but, the reality is that throughout this whole election, the Progressive Conservatives, led by Doug Ford, have had a pretty comfortable advantage, and they've continued. The Liberals have come in second in terms of popular support. The big question is how will these numbers convert into seats?
Yes, they say, the politicians love to say the only poll that counts is the one on Election Day. And a reminder, you are eligible to cast a ballot if you're 18 years of age or older, a Canadian citizen, and a resident of Ontario. Anyone who's received a voter information card in the mail just needs to bring it with a piece of ID that has their name on it to their assigned polling station. If you didn't get a card, it's okay. You'll need ID with your name and your home address. Now we turn our attention to the weather because it definitely factors into Election Day. And right now it's looking pretty good, although it was certainly messy this morning. It was unsettled last night. Is the sky going to clear, or are we in for more of this messy stuff? Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. What are you seeing, Lindsay?
Well, the majority of this system, Michelle, has moved well off to the east, but we're not in the clear entirely. We're going to hold on to a chance of flurries or rain showers as we make our way through this afternoon. But again, not as bad as it was. There were quite a few slippery roads and sidewalks early this morning with that fresh, wet snow. There goes the bulk of that system. There are still winter weather travel advisories in place for eastern sections of our province, but they are coming to an end as we speak. 2 degrees now in the GTA. We're anticipating an afternoon high today of around 4 degrees, so that should help melt some of the fresh snow out there. But again, your Election Day is a little unsettled. Just make sure you take care as you head off to the polling stations. And tomorrow, we are in for another round of perhaps even more significant snow. We'll talk all about it coming up. For now, Michelle, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Well, the slick, snowy conditions led to a challenging morning commute on the roads.
The wet mix causing some TTC buses to get stuck, making a mess of city transit. CTV's John Musselman is live with an update. John.
Well, Nathan, yes, there were some issues today with the TTC on Shepherd Avenue near Arletta. We'll have some video. What our understanding was there's some buses were stuck at the base of a hill because of the slowy, slushy, icy conditions, and they were having difficulty getting up that hill. Now, it did cause some problems. Police were called in. They had to close down the road, but they eventually did clear those buses out of there, but it did cause some delays for a lot of the people trying to come to the Shepherd West subway station. Here is what one transit rider had to tell us.
So I think I was waiting at the bus stop for around 45 minutes before deciding to do something about it. And Uber would have cost upwards of $50, so unfortunately I couldn't do that. So I took another route, which took around an hour and 15 minutes to get here.
Now everything is back to normal here at the Shepherd West stations. Buses are running smoothly and passengers are getting where they need to go. Reporting live, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, John. A motorist is dead after a single vehicle crash on Highway 407 this morning. Provincial police say the vehicle flipped over at around 10 o'clock in the eastbound lanes near Kennedy Road in Markham. They also say the driver was the only person inside, and they were pronounced dead at the scene. OPP have closed the eastbound lanes of the 407 between Woodbine and Warden for this investigation.
And no serious injuries were reported after a crash in Hamilton. It happened just after 11:30 last night at Kenilworth Avenue and Main Street. One of the vehicles ended up crashing into a store, causing significant damage. Hamilton police say the cause of the crash appears to be driver error. No word yet on possible charges.
Toronto police say a man stabbed last week in the city's West End has now died, and the matter is now a homicide investigation. Emergency crews were called to the area of Dovercourt Road and Geary Avenue around 2:30 a.m. on Friday. They found a man suffering from a stab wound and rushed him to hospital with life-threatening injuries, and police say he succumbed to those injuries on Monday. They've also identified him as 38-year-old Paolo Mota of Toronto. He is Toronto's 4th homicide victim of 2025, and police are asking anyone with information about what took place to get in touch. So far, they've shared no suspect information.
A man is injured in a shooting in the West End and is now facing charges. Police were called to the Weston and Lawrence area just before 6 last night. Paramedics say a man in his 20s was rushed to hospital with multiple gunshot wounds. His injuries are described as serious but non-life-threatening. Police say he's facing several gun charges, and they're still looking for a suspect in connection with the shooting. We spoke to a witness last night who did not want to go on camera.
I heard the shots, and when I heard the shots, I opened my window and I was looking outside, and then when I look, I saw the guy running, and I think that's the same guy they said went to the hospital. They're the one that they find into the store or somewhere there.
Did he look really injured, or?
When I saw him running, I saw him like holding his face like this, so I didn't really take notice of him, but yeah, I saw one person running, and that's about it really.
Police have not said if the victim and suspect know each other, and they're asking anyone with information to come forward.
A youth town hall was held in Etobicoke last night to discuss gun violence and community safety in the region.
This is not just something that's an everyday thing. This is something that affects not just one person, but the whole community. So we want to just be here to support our youth and support our communities and get a better understanding of, how they feel and how this has affected them.
This event was organized following the fatal shooting of 16-year-old Isaiah Foga on February 4th. He was shot inside an apartment at 7 Capri Road. No arrests have been made in connection with his murder. Toronto Councillor Stephen Holliday also attended the meeting.
I'd like to hear more from youth about barriers they face to finding jobs. There is work out there. I know many people turn to the city for great summer jobs in recreation, and I encourage anyone that's thinking about what they might do for work in the coming months to think about the city and the opportunity it creates. It's good to earn some money, but it's also teaching yourself life skills and giving yourself a sense of hope for the future.
The Toronto Youth Cabinet is calling on the city to make new investments in opportunities of youth, saying the city's 2025 budget only adds 8 additional youth jobs.
There's been considerable confusion and uncertainty surrounding the timing of those U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods.
Today, the President of the United States confirmed the 25% duties will take effect next Tuesday as planned. On Truth Social, Trump said in part, drugs are still pouring into our country from Mexico and Canada at very high and unacceptable levels. We cannot allow this scourge to continue to harm the USA, and therefore, until it stops or is seriously limited, the proposed tariffs scheduled to go into effect on March 4th will indeed go into effect as scheduled. China will likewise be charged an additional 10% tariff on that date. The April 2nd reciprocal tariff date will remain in full force and effect. Those comments follow Trump's first cabinet meeting yesterday when he also addressed duties against Canada.
The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell lumber or anything else into the United States.
Trump also intends to impose a 10% tax on our energy products, such as oil and electricity. Canadian officials are still working to persuade the president from going ahead with these tariffs. Public Safety Minister David McGuinty is meeting with White House officials in Washington today.
We're sharing the efforts that have been undertaken by Canada and Canadians to make that strong border stronger. It's clear to us that a strong border makes for safer communities in Canada, and a stronger border makes for safer communities in the United States of America. That's ultimately what this is all about, keeping our people safe.
Canada's so-called fentanyl czar is joining McGuinty in the American capital, along with the RCMP commissioner and border agency representatives. The minister says the progress Canada has made on tightening security along the border and combating drug smuggling should satisfy the Trump administration.
An Israeli official says the military will not withdraw from a strategic corridor in the Gaza Strip as called for by the ceasefire. The person says the army must stay there to prevent weapons smuggling. Israeli authorities received the bodies of 4 hostages early today. A convoy believed to be carrying the remains drove to a forensics institute in Tel Aviv. The caskets were delivered with the help of Egyptian mediators through an Israeli crossing. In exchange, more than 600 Palestinian prisoners were freed in the last planned swap of the ceasefire's first phase. Lindsay.
Well, it is looking more and more likely that this is going to end up being our snowiest February on record here in the city of Toronto. The previous record set back in the year 2008 at 76.8 centimeters. We're at 73.4 as of yesterday. That's not including what has so far fallen today and what could fall later on and into tomorrow. Here's a bit of an idea about tomorrow. It's looking like maybe 5 centimeters of fresh snow or more. Some areas are going to see closer to 10 or even 15 well north of Toronto. We're going to take you through the weekend forecast. In addition to it having a snowy start, it's going to be cold. Those details after this break here on CTV News at noon.
Black History Month is a celebration of culture and diversity, and one Toronto school has been recognizing the month-long celebration. And that's where we find our Jessica Smith. Hey, Jess.
Hi, Nathan. We're here at the Alpha Alternative Junior Public School, and we were talking about African Heritage Month, and they've been celebrating all month long. I'll bring in one of the fantastic teachers, Mr. Zio. Come on over. So talk to me about what the school stands for and why it's so important for you guys to recognize African Heritage Month.
Well, the school is very much about kids having a say, kids being represented, kids enjoying themselves and taking responsibility for their education. And it's also a place where parents are very much involved in the school. And Black History Month, African Heritage Month, we like to celebrate that because it's so important for those voices to be heard. And we do anti-Black racism throughout the year. And this is just an opportunity to really celebrate it. And because we have so much parent involvement, they've been so crucial in making all of these great events happen.
Now, we've only been here for maybe about an hour or so, getting to know the students here. Lots of energy, lots of excitement. Are you guys excited? Yeah! That's what I'm talking about. So I have some very important questions. So I'm going to start with you. Can you tell me your first name?
Adrian.
All right, Mr. Adrian, tell me, do you have a favorite subject or a favorite book?
Subject, basketball.
I appreciate that. Do you have an idea of what you want to be when you grow up?
Gamer.
You know what? I dig it. I like that. Round of applause for Adrian and a fantastic answer. All right. So tell me about yourself. Tell me your first name.
My name's Ian.
So Ian, what's your favorite thing to learn about?
I like reading and playing video games with my friends.
Shout out to that one. A round of applause for that answer, too. And for yourself, tell me your first name.
Ethan.
So, Mr. Ethan, what is it you love about school so much?
I love that we don't have to sit at desks, and it's really fun here.
See, we love education. And when it comes to incorporating things like this, is this important to you guys here at the school to incorporate different types of learning and different types of recognition for all the fantastic groups that we have that make up our community?
Definitely. I mean, we live in such a incredibly diverse and so much value in everyone that comes into these buildings. And we love the kids and what they bring and their backgrounds. And we just want to celebrate it all.
And I love that. I love your dress. I'm going to come over here. Can you tell me your first name?
Lily.
So, Miss Lily, what's your favorite thing about learning?
Growing new picture to affiliate my new thing I'm going to do.
I love that. And we have so many different opportunities, especially here, to learn different things. I'm going to get you to come on up here. Can you tell me your first name?
All right.
So tell me, what is it you love about learning?
It's a good school.
It is a good school. Do you know what you want to be when you grow up?
a soccer player.
I love that. So we are recognizing Black History Month, African Heritage Month for the rest of the month, which goes until the end of the week, which is tomorrow. I feel like that's crazy. It goes so quickly. But we're continuing learning here, especially at the Alpha Alternative Junior Public School. I'm going to send things back to the studio. Say bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Boy, they are so excited, and we're excited because today is Election Day, and I think we got a bit of a break of this from the snow just in time for the polling.
I think it seems as though if you're deciding to vote in the back half of the day, it's a little better than it was this morning. But there are people there, and it doesn't matter the weather. Nothing's going to stop them from, making their democratic choice.
Yeah, I love that. And as we've discussed many times, this is a rare winter election, and they do say that weather can impact voter turnout. So I'm hopeful that everyone is able to get to one of the stations today safely. It has been a little bit of a messy morning, but yes, things are starting to improve. We just have another storm that we're going to have to brace for tomorrow. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm Injury Lawyers. You don't pay unless they win. So let's talk about that snow this morning. My goodness, it was pretty, wasn't it? Just not so great for getting around. Those big wet snowflakes coming down in the Markham Road and Lawrence East area. That's where we're seeing this video from. It was at its worst from roughly 7 a.m. to about 9 a.m., simply adding to those snowbanks that are already on roads and sidewalks. Yes, I see some sneakers there on the street, because here's the thing. We all got an early taste of spring this week, and now we're back into winter. The season making itself known once again. There goes the bulk of disturbance number one. There's another that's going to move in for tomorrow. We're still getting a few wet snowflakes or even rain showers around parts of the GTA right now. So an umbrella, maybe not a bad idea if you're venturing out this afternoon. And then see in the top corner of the screen there, that's our next system that's going to move in for tomorrow. The daytime hours are going to start off okay. It'll be a dry start to Friday, albeit cloudy. And then the snow looks to begin in the afternoon. So let's take you through the forecast radar. Bringing it back to today, just a chance of flurries or showers right through the evening hours. We do clear overnight, and then the cloud cover returns into the morning. When does the snow begin? It looks like it could be as early as right after lunchtime. We'll say early afternoon, 1 p.m. This is going to be with us through the afternoon and evening drive, so maybe start planning accordingly today. Leave work early if you can. It will be with us, that wet snow, through the evening hours, and in some cases into the overnight as well. Some areas, once again, maybe seeing a transition over to some rain showers, maybe a little bit of freezing rain as well. Into Saturday, flurries in the morning. We are going to be drier. Look at that lake effect band starting to form off Lake Huron. The big story for tomorrow, Saturday, is going to be a change to northwest winds and some much colder air moving in. So anticipating around 5 centimeters of additional snow tomorrow for the city of Toronto, but you'll notice you don't have to travel too much farther north to get into, double-digit territory as far as accumulation is concerned. Now, it is still mild. We've got a couple of competing weather situations here. It's 5 degrees right now in Windsor versus -3 degrees in Ottawa. Forecasting a high today locally of about 4. So once again, we are above seasonal. Overnight tonight, though, we're dropping to -6 degrees. And here comes the wind chill again. -12 is what it's going to feel like out there. Your weekend at a glance. Snow for Friday. Flurries and windy and cold on Saturday. Sunshine by Sunday. But you are going to feel that chill, especially early in the morning. Overnight low Saturday into Sunday. -15 degrees, feeling colder than that. Bitterly cold start to the month of March, but then look what happens through the middle of next week. Temperatures rebound back to highs of 4 degrees on Tuesday and 7 by Wednesday. That's the weather for now. Michelle, over to you.
It's a roller coaster. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Returning now to our Ontario Election Day coverage. Polls are open for voters to cast their ballot in this rare snap winter election. And on this election day, we are joined by CTV News political commentator Scott Reed. Scott, always fun to talk to you, especially on Election Day. And for 28 days, the candidates, the leaders, they've fanned out across this province, executing their strategic plans on how to win over voters. Now it's up to Ontarians. What do you make of what we saw this past month and where things stand at this critical point?
People could be forgiven for not noticing that there was an election. There are some lawn signs. Maybe occasionally somebody knocked on your door, once asking if they could shovel your drive, another time asking if you would cast a ballot in their favor. But it has been what Doug Ford wanted, which was a pretty quiet campaign that kind of slipped by, largely unnoticed. And without a lot of stirring in the polls, if you take a look at where Doug Ford's numbers began when he called this election, he was somewhere between 45 and 50%, which, by the way, big number electorally. And now he's ending with that same number. So the first thing to watch for tonight is how large will Doug Ford's majority be? It's a rare occasion where someone wins 3 majority governments in a row. And each time he runs, he increases the seat total, which is exactly what we think we're going to see tonight from Doug Ford.
Now, the polls, that's how people feel at that moment in time, but those people have to actually go out and vote. We've been talking about the weather, and you mentioning that, maybe it's a little boring, people aren't paying attention. What if there aren't people I guess my point is, if there's low voter turnout, who would it benefit most? And could some people think, you know what, Doug Ford's going to win, I'm not going to bother?
I think it's a huge factor. And I'm completely with you. And, by and large, probably the Ford campaign is happy with a relatively low voter turnout. They probably feel that benefits them, and they're probably right. But, I don't know about you. It took me an hour and 20 minutes to get my kid to and from school today. Driving around in the city is not easy. And so I do think there's a likelihood that we could see a very low voter turnout. Last election, it was only 43, 44%. Will we see it dip down to 40% this time around? We'll have to see. And then your big question, which is, and if it is really low, who does that advantage? The NDP in an odd way are really counting on a low voter turnout as well, because their belief is that even though it looks like they're well in third place, that their superior get-out-the-vote machine, their ability to marshal voters and hit their marked list, as we call it in politics, in those 416 ridings in downtown Toronto, they think that will give them an advantage and help them hang on to official opposition. And that's going to be the big battle to watch tonight. Who comes in second?
Definitely. And here's the thing. Ford's challengers this time around, new faces, right? Bonnie Crombie, Marit Stiles. Do Ontarians know who they are? And were they listening to their issues, healthcare and housing? Or do you think Doug Ford's message, really, it seems like he was running against Donald Trump, even though he said he's a fan, that's what's really sticking with people who are worried about the economy?
Yeah, Doug Ford won that battle for the frame of the election, and he got a huge assist from Donald Trump, because Ford, called this election and said, listen, I want to focus on Trump and tariffs, how we best protect our economy, our industry, our jobs. And this challenge is coming at us like a locomotive. And lo and behold, almost every day in this election campaign, Trump has indeed popped up. Again, just yesterday, I might impose tariffs on March 4th. I might impose them on April 2nd. I might do different waves of tariffs on either time. And so that has added constant fuel to the Doug Ford furnace, allowing him to say this election is about Trump and tariffs and cross-border trade and protecting our economy. And it hasn't really allowed the opposition parties to get their issues known or to get their leaders known, as you asked.
CTV's political commentator, Scott Reed, great to have you with us. Always fun to pick your brain.
Thanks. See you soon.
Take care.
One mother's fight to raise awareness about a rare but aggressive form of breast cancer, helping to create a research and support organization for Canadians.
Inflammatory breast cancer is rare, but an aggressive form of the disease.
Now, one patient has started a new research and support organization specifically for Canadians. CTV's health reporter Pauline Shan has the details.
I was still nursing my second daughter when I started to develop these symptoms, and it was like skin thickening at first, and my breast was swelling. But when you're nursing, you have milk in your breast.
But with no detectable lump, none of the healthcare professionals Danielle Cameron saw through her third pregnancy thought it was cancer.
They said, it's interesting because I've never seen this before, but it's definitely not cancer.
Those that are detectable tend to be a mass that's not painful. And so when there is like a painful dimpling of the skin, in particular in a younger woman, the first inclination is to think that this is not a malignancy.
When little Penelope was born, she refused to nurse on the right side.
He said there's literally less than 3% chance that this could be cancer. And he could tell that I was worried, and he said, just to reassure you, I'm going to send you to a breast specialist.
It was inflammatory breast cancer, a rare but aggressive form of the disease.
IBC often presents with painfulness, tenderness, swelling, and changes in the skin of the breast, which is the typical thing that we use to diagnose it.
Danielle immediately began treatment, and while she is now stage 4, she is stable. And 5 years after her diagnosis, she's begun a new website, ibcnetworkcanada.org, modeled after a U.S. group that helped her in the past.
The main purpose of the website is to fund research, but it's also there to provide education and support for patients and their families.
Danielle says while IBC survival rates tend to be lower than other forms of breast cancer, she is living proof that treatments can be successful. But treatments can only begin when people are informed and get diagnosed. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Toronto General Hospital has been ranked number 3 in the world. Newsweek placed Toronto General behind the Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic for the 2nd year in a row. The list of more than 2,400 hospitals is compiled based on surveys of medical experts and patients, along with hospital quality metrics. UHN says it takes great pride in the achievement, as well as being named the top publicly funded hospital in the world.
A child in Texas has died from the measles. It's the first reported death from the highly contagious virus in the United States in a decade.
Here in Canada, there have been nearly 100 cases so far this year, compared to 6 this time last year. CTV's Heather Wright reports.
Officials in Texas say this is the largest measles outbreak in 30 years and has claimed the life of a child who was admitted to hospital last week. The outbreak has grown to at least 124 cases, mostly within a Mennonite community. Nearly all are children, and in almost every case, the patient is unvaccinated.
When you layer a very infectious virus in close quarters with many kids that are unvaccinated, that is a recipe for a disaster.
Measles cases are rising around the world, driven in part by declining vaccination rates. In Canada, there have been 95 cases of measles in the first 2 months of this year, compared to 147 cases for all of 2024, with Quebec, Ontario, and Manitoba all reporting new cases last week.
This is problematic. We're headed in the wrong direction.
Measles can cause high fever, cough, and eventually the telltale rash. It can lead to swelling of the brain, pneumonia, and death. The virus is highly contagious, but also preventable.
When we see rates of vaccine higher than 90%, preferably around the 95% range, we just don't see subsequent transmission of measles in our communities. But as you have pockets of in the community where rates are lower, you start to see outbreaks, and that's exactly what we're seeing now.
Around the world, measles cases are on the rise, up 20% in 2023 compared to the year before. Here in Canada, experts say more needs to be done to encourage families to vaccinate their children and also combat the spread of vaccine misinformation. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
In Rome, Pope Francis is continuing his recovery from double pneumonia. Medical staff and dozens of faithful gathered in the hospital chapel to attend a mass for the pontiff. The Vatican says he once again slept well, had breakfast, and resumed his therapy this morning. The results of more medical tests are expected later today. Yesterday, doctors reported slight improvements in the Pope's clinical condition. An investigation is underway in New Mexico after the death of a Hollywood legend, Gene Hackman.
I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game. In my book, we're going to be winners.
The 95-year-old Oscar winner, his wife Betsy, and their dog were found dead in their Santa Fe home on Wednesday after a neighbor asked police to do a welfare check. Authorities haven't shared details on potential causes of death, but they say the circumstances are suspicious. Hackman played a long list of prominent roles on the big screen, including Popeye Doyle in The French Connection and Lex Luthor opposite Christopher Reeve in Superman.
He tried journalism before going into acting, and getting into acting was not necessarily the easiest path for him. I mean, he went on to win 2 Academy Awards and make dozens and dozens of films. And even when he wasn't the top billed star in a film, he was always the star because of his charisma and talent and sort of effortlessness about it. But when he first started studying acting at the Pasadena Playhouse, his teachers said, "You're never going to make it. You're not good looking enough."
Among many tributes to Hackman, director Francis Ford Coppola remembered Hackman as a great actor, inspiring and magnificent in his work and complexity. He added, "I mourn his loss and celebrate his existence and contribution."
Former co-stars are also paying tribute to actress Michelle Trachtenberg after she was found dead in her New York home Wednesday.
We're turning around. One last battle and the war is won.
Trachtenberg was best known for her roles as Georgina Sparks on Gossip Girl and the main character's sister Dawn on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She made her acting debut as a child star on Nickelodeon projects. Sources tell ABC News she recently had a liver transplant. The report said the 39-year-old is believed to have died of natural causes. Nothing's been confirmed yet.
Paul McCartney is releasing a book telling the story of the group he led after the Beatles broke up. Wings, the story of a band on the run, is based on interviews with McCartney and others in the 70s and early 80s. It's expected to chronicle his time in the band, along with co-founders Linda McCartney and Denny Lane. It's set to hit bookstore shelves November 4th.
Still to come on CTV News at noon, Toronto's composite index slipped a little in morning trading. Details in the rest of your business headlines after the break. Turning now to your business headlines, strong results from the banks supported Toronto stocks this morning.
That's even after U.S. President Donald Trump said 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico are on track to go into place Tuesday of next week. Andrew Bell of B&M Bloomberg has the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Toronto stocks slipped a little in morning trading, but the composite index was boosted by gains in CIBC and TD Bank. That's after profit in the lender's latest quarter beat expectations. However, shares in Royal Bank were down 2% following an uptick in impaired loans. U.S. President Donald Trump warned that 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico are set to kick in on March 4th. He said drugs from the two countries are still entering the U.S. at, quote, very high and unacceptable levels. Shares in the chip seller NVIDIA, which has ridden a wave of massive spending on artificial intelligence equipment, fell 3%. Investors saw the latest results from the company as good but not great. NVIDIA says profit margins will be lower than anticipated as it rushes to roll out a new chip design called Blackwell. And finally, shares in Visa hit a record high in New York. The car giant is diversifying its business rapidly. It expects revenue from non-traditional services such as anti-fraud measures and data sharing technology to make up more than half of total revenue in coming years. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of B&N Bloomberg.
The Federal Privacy Commission says he will investigate whether social media platform X is respecting laws around Canadians' personal information. Philippe Dufresne shared those plans in response to a request from an NDP MP. Brian Massey requested the watchdog look into the privacy ramifications of using X. He pointed specifically to owner Elon Musk's ties to the Trump administration and asked whether usage of the app, especially on government phones, marks a security risk. Dufresne said those issues are not under his jurisdiction, but he would investigate whether X is respecting rules on using personal information to train artificial intelligence. More than 1 million mortgages will renew in 2025, and already there are signs thousands of homeowners are facing financial pressure.
Equifax says more than 11,000 people in Ontario missed making their mortgage payment in the fourth quarter of last year. CTV's Pat Warren has this consumer alert.
5 years ago, we were still dealing with the COVID pandemic. Housing prices were near record highs and interest rates close to record lows. For homeowners who have had to renew their mortgages after their 5-year term was up, some are seeing major increases in their monthly payments.
We've seen those missed payment rates been going up and up and up for at least 18 months now.
Equifax Canada says delinquency rates are on the rise, especially in Ontario, where 11,000 households missed at least one payment in the fourth quarter of last year. That's a 90% increase over the same period the year before. The survey found households are also taking on more credit card debt as well as high-interest car loans.
This report that mortgage delinquencies are going up is a very worrisome trend.
Many homeowners who had mortgages for 2% are now renewing at 5%, meaning their payments have increased hundreds of dollars a month or much more depending on their situation.
I'm talking to lots of people who are telling me, yeah, my mortgage payment went up $2,000 a month. That's not unusual at all. Most people didn't see their pay go up $2,000 a month, so it puts a huge strain on the budget.
It tells us that people are encountering a little bit more financial stress.
With more families finding their budgets stretched, they're having to refinance to pay off consumer debts so they can keep paying their mortgage.
I do think that a lot of Canadians have bitten off a little bit more than they can chew, and they're having some trouble paying that stuff back.
If interest rates go down, that could offer some relief, but current issues with the U.S. may mean more economic pressures.
There's been a lot of conversation about tariffs. You know, if some of those do come into play, we could see things like unemployment levels rising, and that could lead to a much wider spread financial shock for consumers.
Pat Foran, CTV News.
Organizers at Pride Toronto say this year's celebration may look a little different amid rising costs and uncertainty with corporate sponsors. Pride Toronto says they've made the decision to cancel the stage at Dundas and Church Streets and are pausing a two-day mini festival on the Toronto Islands. They're also focusing on featuring more local artists instead of international headliners. Pride Toronto's executive director says 3 major corporate sponsors are reducing their contributions, potentially pulling out of the festival entirely, citing a, quote, shift in priorities. That expected shortfall amounts to roughly $300,000. Pride runs from June 26th to the 30th.
The Raptors were in action last night against the Indiana Pacers.
Down once again. Barrett, mid-range, good. And RJ coming alive here in the fourth.
Indiana led after the first quarter and built on their lead for the rest of the game. They ended up winning 111-91. The Raptors will be back on the court tomorrow to play the Chicago Bulls.
To Florida, where a NASA mission to locate water on the moon began today.
3, 2, 1, mission and liftoff. Go button, go to ignition.
A rocket carrying a satellite and a lunar lander lifted up from Cape Canaveral this morning. The satellite will keep a lookout from above while the lander will do its work on the surface. The goal is to find water or ice deposits that will be key for the Artemis mission. It intends to put astronauts on the moon for long-term stays.
Coming up, a Canadian filmmaker is urging moviegoers to support local creators. We take a look at his latest work, now streaming. That's after the break.
While many people are buying Canadian, a young filmmaker is also urging people to watch Canadian.
CTV's Andrea Kay spoke with the creator and star of Older Every Day.
Al! What? Wake up, I've got something to tell you.
In the film Older Every Day, nothing brings people closer like a little tragedy. It was written, produced, and stars Quebec native Eric Fleissing.
Older Every Day tells the story of Val, who gets kicked out of university and moves back to his small town to live with his widowed father. And he sets himself 2 goals. He wants to write the next great novel, and he wants to get back with his high school girlfriend that he regrets breaking up with. But then things take a turn for Val when one of his best friends dies, leaving his friend's younger brother, Charlie, orphaned. So Val and his dad take Charlie, and Val is faced with this responsibility and discovers that he needs to grow up fast so that Charlie doesn't have to.
The idea for the film popped into his head while he was acting in a play in New York, where he went to school. It required his character to play dead for an extended period of time.
He's dead on stage for like 15 minutes at the end of the play. So I'm laying there, trying not to breathe. I'm like, oh, I don't like this that much. I think I should do more film.
It took some years to work on the script and then finding a producer and a team to believe in the project.
People that care, because when there's not that much money to spend, you need people that are like invested in the story itself. So I was really lucky to be able to find that. There's so much talent in Canada. Great talent in this movie.
Shot throughout the Greater Toronto Area, it first premiered at the Forest City Film Festival in London.
I just hope people, when they think to buy Canadian, they think more than just the ketchup or beer. They think about our art and culture, because that's what differentiates us as a nation. We need to invest in Canadian culture.
Older Every Day is available now on streaming services including Apple and Bell Video on Demand. Andrea Case, CTV News.
Well, we're into the back half of the week, and it is unsettled. If people are planning to get out and vote today, what's a good window weather-wise?
Well, this afternoon, there's really the chance of showers or flurries throughout, but it's not looking too bad right now in some areas. On the satellite and radar, we're seeing even a little bit of rain showing up on radar in areas like Hamilton and over toward Niagara. A couple of snowflakes, perhaps, in through York and Durham region right now. Here is your election forecast for the rest of this afternoon and evening. A reminder that the polls close at 9 p.m. Here's tomorrow's forecast. Daytime high about 2 degrees. And yes, we do have another round of snow on the way for your Friday afternoon and evening. This is your 7-day forecast, which includes a very cold weekend, first full weekend of March. Nathan and Michelle.
All right. Thanks, Lindsay. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great day.